Hey YouTube, Awesome Writer here. Welcome to my review for the first issue in the Darkest Hour event, issue 111 of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, but the beginning of a year-long initiative event, our first event since Shattered Grid, and kind of a bigger event to a degree since it's going on so long. And it was a really strong start. Kind of like last issue though, was basically a prelude to this, which is obvious. This was very much a setup issue, kind of setting the stage for a lot of things, but that doesn't necessarily mean it was bad at all or it wasn't exciting. It just means there wasn't necessarily a lot going on that you weren't expecting already, but it was still quite good. You had a couple different scenes going on. You had stuff like Zed fighting in the Serpentera Zord, kind of bantering with whatever Yellow Ranger's name is from the Omega Rangers. You had them around. You had Trini and Zack were fighting against Dane and the Death Ranger like last week. Had some banter between them. You had the Draken Rangers arriving finally. You know, if you read Power Rangers, was it Unlimited? Yeah, Unlimited. I keep getting confused with the universe. Unlimited one shot. It gave the backstory on the creation of these Draken Rangers. I recommend reading that. But they were at one of the arches, and Alpha 6 or Alpha 1, excuse me, was at one of the arches, and that all of a sudden the Draken Rangers come out. I was surprised the Hyperforce Rangers didn't show up, unless they did and I'm forgetting it, but I was like, after the Draken Rangers showed up, I thought the Hyperforce Rangers were going to be next, because I thought okay, we're going to get everybody here. But so I guess I'm curious what happened to them and how they're going to enter the story, because I imagine they're going to be involved in the story at some point. I'm actually not sure if they're going to be major players or not, but regardless, I'm sure they'll show up at some point. It was cool to see the Draken Rangers arrive though. I'm interested to see these interactions, and the suits looked really good in this shot. Not that they looked bad in the other issue by any stretch, but this was a really cool next intro for them, or first intro for a lot of people that are just reading this, which was rather cool. I imagine that's kind of a cool, unexpected thing if you didn't read the issue. But yeah, again, I recommend checking it out, both of them, because it kind of ties into this overall. But the main stuff going on, obviously, was the ending, which we'll talk about in a second, but the main stuff outside of the ending setting things up was the stuff with Matt. As we often do with these issues, we opened up with a flashback showing some of Matt's early training before he, revealed himself as the Green Ranger, showing his sort of insecurities. He's like, the guy before me, was a, 6-time black belt. Why did you choose me? And it's he's like, oh, it's because of your heart, cheesy Power Rangers nonsense. He's like, pep talk, we good? So it was a nice little scene between him and Grace, though, kind of further cementing their bond, kind of doing some work on the stuff they didn't do before, to sort of reinforce where we're at now, which I completely forgot that there was a cliffhanger last issue that it looked like Matt had stabbed Grace, and they continue that here, and you still don't know exactly what happened. I don't think it's as clean cut, no pun intended, as people are thinking with this, but it's definitely interesting. The interactions there, because everyone's mad at him. I think it's Billy that starts off attacking him, which makes sense because he has probably the closest relationship with Grace. You even have Tommy have Saba on Matt at one point, and he's like, just do it, just kill me. And then he's groveling before Rita, and he's in a really bad place. But I have to say, despite still having some slight mixed feelings on doing Evil Green Ranger again, I think they've done some really cool stuff with his character, and I've really been enjoying that. In addition to being excited for the big lore stuff happening with this story coming up, I think the character stuff with Matt has been great. And it's kind of meta in a way, because they're, in this context of the story, a lot about what drove him was him feeling forgotten. I don't know why I said it all fancy like that. But also, I feel like it's meta because I felt like the writers and the storytellers kind of forgot about him too after the intro. I feel like they just had the excitement of hey, there's a new Green Ranger, and then he was just kind of shuffled in the background. So I'm really curious to see where his story goes, where it ends in this Darkest Day event, as we have kind of a long road ahead of us. But then, of course, you have the big ending with Rita opening up the grid corruption, and she gets Dark Specter free, and he does indeed possess the vessel. Obviously, that's what they were setting up, but I was curious how that was all going to go down. It gives him this cool new looking form. I'm so curious how this is going to go, because thus far the comics, obviously are they're in a different universe, period, but they're on a very different track. They have big differences from the main timeline and their original main timeline before Shattered Grid, but at the same time, they seem to always want to bring things back to the status quo to a degree, so that they can hit major beats from the TV series continuity, even if they do things differently. So even if they do big things, they'll reset so that existing stuff is possible. But obviously Dark Specter's big push was within the In Space series, and so I'm really curious if they're finally just gonna let the shackles go and let us go completely free, which is kind of what I want to see, or if there's gonna be something that gets Dark Specter resealed or whatever, and then set it up for what would be in space. Maybe like the resolution's gonna be, because they have mentioned the fiance body that they used for Dark Specter from Turbo a couple times. So maybe they're setting up for like his defeat as he gets trapped in that body, which is like a lesser body somehow. Like, I'm conflicted. I think my number one ideal would just be, let's just move the shackles off. Like, I don't care what the TV continuity did. If we can hit some of those beats, if it works with your story, great. But we're in a new timeline, we're in a new universe. Not only is it a separate universe, but after Shattered Grid, it was kind of like their Flashpoint, where like they changed reality. So it's like we have multiple excuses to go off book. So I do want that. But at the same time, admittedly, I do like seeing them do their version of stories we know, because it's often a better version. But I'm immensely curious about that. But within this corruption, it seems to kind of very similar to what we saw in Shattered Grid, where we would see panels of how the grid shattering stuff affected people throughout the Ranger multiverse. You see a panel of it starting to affect our heroes. I think there's a shot of the world of the coinless, SPD, RPM, so something is happening to everyone at once, and it was really exciting. Very good, very much Shattered Grid vibes there at the end, because this is going to obviously involve more than just the core characters, because it's an anniversary event. But it was a strong start to the issue. Like I said, very setup, oriented, but it was a strong setup that got me excited, giving me Shattered Grid vibes, but something new. And also, I'm very interested in the Matt character stuff. I would give this issue a 4 out of 5. But what did you guys think at the beginning of the Darkest Hour event? Let me know in the comments as always. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps, and ring that bell so you can get notifications for my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.